Azure Functions, it can be really powerful. It's based on this technology that is called serverless. Doesn't mean that there's no server behind the scenes. There is one, except that you only need to write some code. So I'll show you in this video how to write a little bit of code, but we'll go a step beyond. We're gonna use Python with Flask. It takes some special configuration to do that, and then we're gonna deploy it using VS Code, the text editor, directly to Azure, to the Azure cloud. But then we're gonna take it even a step further by doing some automation. We create some GitHub Actions, so anytime we're making a change to the code, we'll get a new deployment. Let's see how we can get all of that done. Let's see how we can build an Azure function using Flask. Now, Azure Functions are based on the serverless technology. All cloud providers have like their own version of what I'm going to be doing here, but specifically I'm going to concentrate on Azure. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is going to create a function app from scratch on the portal. So I'm going to create a new resource group here. I'm going to call it demo function. It's a good idea to have some sort of like naming convention so that your resource groups can then be deleted, because you can match, say for example, anything that is demo, then you can delete later and forget about not remembering every single service that is associated with the resource group. So that's good. So demo function. So everything that I create is going to be get into this group from the resource group that I just created. Now the function name needs to be unique, so let's do something like Alfredo demo function, and that will probably be available, and you get a green check. So if you don't, so if you do something like demo, I'll probably not be available, right? So let's keep it as Alfredo demo function. And I'm gonna be using Python today because I want to use Flask. Runtime is going to ask you about what type of runtime. I'm going to choose Python here, 3.9 as a default. Central US is fine for now. And then the operating system is going to stay with Linux. Plan type is consumption serverless, and this has like a free threshold. I don't remember right now what that number is, but it's enough so that you can deploy these, test it out, and then destroy it and be done with it and not be charged anything. All right, so let's do the review and create. Great, so I loaded and this looks okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click create. And it's going to initialize the deployment, and that's going to take a couple of minutes. While this is in progress, I'm going to switch to my terminal to a new directory where I'm going to be creating the code so that we can create this function that is now running. All right, so in my terminal, I'm going to use the code executable. You can install this from VS Code. It's going to open VS Code in this case. I'm going to say yes here. And just so that you can see there's nothing in this directory. So I'm going to use code again and dot for saying open right here. So this opens my Visual Studio Code editor, and I'm presented with an empty directory. There's nothing going on here. And I have the Azure extension pack installed here. If you don't have it, you would go here to Azure extension pack, Azure tools, see Azure Functions for sure. You would go ahead and install that. There we go, that jumped. If you search for Azure and you install this one, that's the one you need. The Azure extension pack installs all kinds of different things to manage Azure, but we're gonna use Azure Functions. So what this effectively does, let me see, Azure Functions, it's already installed, so I'm verifying that that's good to go. So I'm going to open the command palette. Again, there's no code here. I'm going to open the command palette. I'm going to say Azure Functions create function. So actually create new project. So this is a new project. That's my current directory. Yes, it's going to be Python. I'm going to use Python 3.9. And it's going to be an HTTP trigger. That means that whenever there's a request coming into the function, it's going to be processed. You have all kinds of different triggers, but I'm going to use the HTTP one. HTTP trigger 1 is not what I want to call this. I want to call this my main function. I'm going to click return. And the authorization level is going to be anonymous. This doesn't need any authorization level. and it's going to start creating. So you can see here it's populating lots of different files, and that's already getting populated. I'm gonna make it bigger, so we're gonna start looking at some of the code. All right, so it has finished creating the project, so that's good. And then the next thing that we're gonna do is that, well, we want to use Flask. So in requirements.txt, we're going to make sure that Flask is included. So I'm gonna say Flask over here. I'm gonna save these, and that's going to update our requirements. And next, I am going to go and in the underscore init.py, I am going to, let's actually take a look at what the documentation says, because the documentation will tell you a couple of different things. So and I'll share these in the links, but when you're doing the Flask framework in an Azure Function app, it has the Flask application in a different file, and then it points to this main function here. I'm just gonna keep everything on the same file because it's simpler to reason about. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so back to the Visual Studio Code editor. I am going to import from Flask, import Flask, and then I'm going to say also import request, because we're gonna actually not a request, but let's do a redirect. We're gonna do a very simple redirect function, of a function that is going to perform an HTTP redirect based on some input. All right, so we have that. Next, as you know, Flask requires you to create an application. So we're gonna say Flask underscore name, which it takes the name of the file over here. All right, I'm gonna save that, and then instead of these code that we have here, I'm gonna remove all of these. We don't need any of these, and then we can leave that login statement there. It's always useful. We are going to say return func. I'm going to say WSG middleware, or whiskey middleware, app, whiskey underscore app. And we're actually just following what the docs say here: handle, request, context, and then that's fine. So REQ is the request, and then the context. We need to actually update this thing here, which is context, and that's the func context. There you go. So again, following let's try to hide this thing for a second. There we go. So this is just following the documentation. So if you go back to the web browser, you will see that's exactly what we're doing here. Is effectively copy pasting this function. I'm not doing this one because that's coming from a different module. So I'm going to go back here. So that looks okay to me. And next, what we're going to do is, well, we're going to start creating our Flask app. So this is, this right here would be code from Azure Functions. And now this is code for Flask application. All right, so our code for Flask application, as you know, we're going to be routing. So app.route. I'm going to say anything that goes to the root. I'm going to handle this. This is going to be called the index. And effectively what I want is to do a redirect. We're going to say login.info. I'm going to say that, how about that we're going to be performing a redirect. So Flask app about to do a redirect. All right, so we are going to be doing a redirect. How about we do a redirect to the portal? Let's do something that takes me directly to the portal. So I'm gonna say, and of course this is very basic, but just to get the point. So I'm gonna do return redirect. I'm gonna pass in the URL. So that will be https portal.azure.com. Right, I need to use a string here, and then I'm gonna say code is 301. So I'm using something that is very basic again, but just to prove a point, right? That you can actually use Flask. I could actually just return an HTTP response. I'm going to do a redirect. I like doing a redirect. All right, so Next, I'm gonna save these, and this code right now won't necessarily work correctly, and the reason why is because the docs tells us that we need to change a couple of things. We need to add a couple of things to the function.json. Let's take a look at the documentation real quickly so that you can see what I'm talking about. So here you can see that the function.json is modified to include route in the HTTP trigger. So that means that this piece right here needs to be added. We can even get rid of the post because we're not going to handle any post request. I'm going to just do a route. So let's go ahead and copy paste these and put it inside our function.json here in our Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to go open the Explorer. Function.json is right there. And if you remember, it's right after this. Oops. And I'm going to put it right there. Okay, so that got updated. Next, what we need to do is update a different file. So I'm going to keep scrolling down, and the host.json file is updated to include the HTTP route prefix. And you can see that the route prefix is now empty. So let's go ahead and change that. So we're going to need to copy paste these and then go back to our text editor over here and then find this host.json. Let's see where it is. It's right here. So I'm going to click there, and if we take a look at where that change needs to happen, well, we need to go and add it right after, right before the extensions bundle. So I'm gonna open that a new line over there. I'm gonna say extensions. I'm gonna add a comma, and you can see that the text editor is already underlining here in squiggly lines. That's because I didn't add a comma, so expect a comma. So be aware of those. You might have a typo. Make sure that you double check that everything looks fine. All right, so I think this looks good to go. Let's triple check our documentation here. We've updated both JSON files, and then we can actually install this and run it locally. But I wanna, instead of doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and deploy. This is brand new application that I've just created. I'm going to go ahead and deploy it. So I'm gonna use the command palette. I'm gonna say Azure Functions. I'm gonna deploy to function app is what I'm gonna be using. This is my subscription, and it already picked up that I have an Alfredo demo function, which is what we created in the beginning. I'm gonna select that. I'm gonna get a prompt saying, "Are you sure?" And yes, I am very sure. I want to deploy, and it's going to deploy. Check out the output window, and yes, we definitely want to do that because it will tell you what is going on and how that's moving along. So that's perfect. Let's wait a second until that completes. Okay, awesome. So this completed that, and now we get these options. So let's look at the stream logs. Let's quickly click there, and what is happening here is that you can't really see this because it opened in a different window, but I'm going to bring it over onto the view. So there you go. Live metrics not available. Your app is offline or using an older SDK. So this in fact is a pretty useful. I didn't enable the metrics, so I'm going to just close these, and you can see that this is looking good. All right, so this is an HTTP trigger. It means that we can go to the browser. So you can see. Let's get the URL. Let's get the URL. The URL is this guy right here. It's Alfredo demo function AzureWebsites.net. So if I go back to my web browser and I go to my portal, and I go to the resource that I created, you can see that the URL is right there. Okay, so it seems that I did have a problem in my extension, so I'm gonna have to fix that. This is good because I'm getting into trouble and we'll have to figure out how to fix it. So I'm gonna open a new tab, and this is probably going to function host is not running. You can see that there it's I have problems. All right, so let's go and fix them. So it says that host.json has a problem on line 20. Okay, so no problem. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code. Let's open the Explorer. Let's go to host.json. So I'm gonna close these. Line 20 is of course right here, and I am getting into trouble. Let's see what it says. Expected comma or closing bracket. All right, and the reason why we have that is because I opened this bracket right here, and didn't close it. So instead of having this in multiple lines, let me let's make all of these in a single line. So I'm gonna do these, and there you go. So I'm gonna save these. Now there's no red. I'm gonna save these, and I'm gonna deploy again. So the nice thing about using VS Code as an editor is that you can continuously do this and deploy the function, and select everything again, and go and deploy, and look at the logs. Yes, I want to look at the logs, and it's going to be deploying. All right, let's take a quick second there until that completes, and check if now the portal reports that this is all correct. All right, so this has completed. I'm gonna close these. It says that everything looks okay. So let's go back to the browser, to the portal. I'm going to refresh, and now our error is gone. I'm gonna go to my function. I'm gonna reload, and remember, this is a redirect. So you saw that I got a redirect. Perhaps that was too fast. We can actually try it on the terminal right here. So we can do a curl on verbose mode, and let's actually go ahead and copy the URL. So I'm going to copy it to clipboard, going back to the terminal. I'm going to paste that here, and let's see what we get. So we get a request. The request gets processed. Is HTTPS. We get a 301, and then it moves over to the portal.azure.com. So that's nice, and it means that everything is working as we're expected. So one of the things that you can do is in overview, you can actually look at application insights and get a little bit of metrics that happen within your function. Here I'm looking at some server requests. You can see I got a couple there. Availability, well, it's not capturing availability right now. The server request does, and the server response time average looks pretty healthy to me. So that's it. That's how we deploy it with VS Code very quickly, but our application is not right now on it's just living on a directory somewhere. So this is not very good if we wanted to actually go and get something for continuous deployment. So why don't we go ahead and do that? I'm gonna create this demo-function repository. It's empty. I just created this, and I am going to go ahead and put all of my code in this repository, and then we're going to automate it with some GitHub Actions, and then we'll change the redirect to do something else. How about that? So I'm going to add a README. There we go, and then we're gonna copy all of these, and I'm gonna go to my terminal, and I'm gonna say, well, we need to do a couple of things here. We need to do git init, and that's going to be for the current directory, and that's fine. And now we're gonna say git add everything in here, and then we're going to commit and push everything. And now if we reload, that won't have a readme. That's fine. So to add a function, we are going to be using a we're going to be using the documentation from Microsoft. We're going to go to this continuous delivery by using GitHub Actions. We are going to, this allows you to use GitHub Actions for deploying an Azure function. And we need to add the GitHub secrets, so that's the first thing I'm going to do. So we are going to go back to my demo function. I'm going to get this publish profile. That's what so that comes from over. You get the publish profile that's going to download, and I'm going to copy that to my clipboard, and then paste it according to the documentation as a secret, and I need to put it as Azure Function App Publish Profile. All right, so I'm gonna go back to my repository settings. I'm gonna go down to secrets, select actions, new repository secret, and this required me to create an Azure, let me see, Azure Function App Publish Profile. So I'm gonna copy that, go back to the secrets, put it there. I'm gonna paste that and add the secret. Now, because this is the publish profile and it's supposed to be secret, I'm gonna paste it, click add secret, and then come back. All right, my Azure Function App Publish profile is there, is good to go. And next, I'm going to create the action. Now, one thing that is useful here is to search for say like something like an Azure function. So you can say Azure and hit return. But what we're going to be doing today is we're going to follow the documentation. So in here where it says create the environment, you're gonna be able to build the function application. Well, let's actually scroll a little bit app and try to find what we need to do in order for Python. Set up an environment is done using language specific. So that will do for Python, building the function application and then deploying the function application. That's fine. So what we're going to be doing is here's the complete thing that we need. And you can see here that the Azure Function App Publish profile is there. We need the package path and the function app name. So we're going to copy all of these, go back here and say set up a workflow yourself. And this is going to be, let's call this instead of main, we call it deploy. And we call it deploy Azure function. And then we're going to remove all of these and paste our copy from what we have before. Oh, look at that! It already has a name. So let's remove that. That's what we got, the red squiggly underlines. So my app name, if you remember, is Alfredo demo function, and you can verify that by going to the portal, and that's the name is right here. So Alfredo demo function, Azure function app package path is dot, that's fine. And I believe the Python version that we were using is Python 3.9. I think this is not entirely correct. Like I think this is outdated. So remember when we created our function, it said Python 3.9, and then nothing here needs to change. I'm gonna say start commit. Let's do workflow dispatch. We can say workflow underscore dispatch. That allows us to try. That's bad indentation. So one of the things that we can do here. Yes, I don't want. Let me remove on push. There we go. Workflow dispatch allows us to do this on demand instead of on every push. You can change that later, of course. I'm going to commit that. There we go. And now I'm going to go to actions, and then I'm going to see deploy Azure function, and I'm going to say run the workflow from the branch main and run it and see what happens. This will take a second and we'll come back when it's complete. All right, so our Azure deployment function workflow with GitHub Actions completed. You can see that run Azure Functions action was correct. Everything looks fine. Now, why is this useful? Because I can come here to my demo function. Now I don't need VS Code. I don't need to do anything locally. I can submit a pull request and make that update. Now, remember, I'm triggering on manually, but you can trigger on any push. But I want to go here to my main code and say, for example, I want to redirect not to the portal. I'm going to edit here directly, and I don't want to redirect to the portal, but say I want to redirect to Azure.com or straight away. I'm gonna commit that, update that, and then because right now, if we go to my function and I copy these, I go to a new tab and put that there, it will take me to the portal, right? So that's good. That's my current redirect. I'm gonna close these, go back. Now I'm redirecting to Azure.com. So I'm going to go to Actions, go to Deploy Azure Function, Run Workflow, branch main, run workflow again. This will take another second. It took 2 minutes last time, so we'll wait 2 minutes and then come back. But there you go. It's now triggered, and we'll wait a couple of minutes until that's complete. All right, so that completed. It only took a minute, so that's good. And now we're going to test our little function here. So instead of just going through my regular session, because the redirects are cached by the browser, I'm going to open a private window, and I'm going to paste my function over here. I'm going to run it and see, look at that, Azure.Microsoft.com, which is the same redirect as Azure.com, and then our redirect is working perfect. So what we've built today is pretty useful because we've not only created a function with Azure using Flask. You can see here in the requirements of text we had a Flask, but we also changed a little bit the configuration using host JSON, and then a little bit the code here in _init. We created our Flask application. Now I did a very silly, very simple, straightforward redirect with Flask, just redirecting to Azure. Before I was just redirecting to portal.azure.com. Now I'm just straight to azure.com, and then we also learned how to do that deploying with our code editor here that you can see with VS Code. We used the extensions to do that as well. That worked perfectly, but with automation, going back to here to our repository, we created a repository, we got all of our code. So tomorrow, if I'm not around and someone else joins the company and say, well, how can we update this process? Well, all you need to do is make a change, submit a pull request, and that will get deployed automatically. So there you go. That's how you would use Azure Functions with Flask, with automation and GitHub Actions.